Welcome to Hilary Topper On Air, the podcast you can't afford to miss.
Could you imagine riding your bike at 183 miles an hour? My next guest is the fastest cyclist in the world, and she broke all records doing it. I'm Hilary Topper, and this is Hilary Topper On Air. Today, I'm speaking with Denise Korenek. Denise is the CEO of Rancho Santa Fe Security Systems and the Guinness Book of World Records holder for the fastest cyclist in the world in Project Speed/Team FireCycle. Welcome, Denise. That was a mouthful to the show.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
So I just want to tell you that I saw your video. My son actually showed it to me, and I was so incredibly impressed. I'm a triathlete, and, I barely go 15 miles an hour. So seeing you at 183.9 miles an hour on your bike was incredible. Can you tell us about that experience and what your motivation for doing that was?
Absolutely. Yes, it definitely was a 6-year-long journey to get to that point in September of 2018 to ride 183.9 miles an hour. And really there's a little bit of the answer on the motivation goes back quite a bit as I raced bicycles from 14 through 19 years old, back in the late 80s and early 90s. And so during that time, I had a couple coaches. One of them is John Howard, who in 1985 actually broke the land speed record, the same exact motor-paced bicycle land speed record by going 152 miles an hour. And so I got into racing, did my 5 years of racing, then sort of life took over. I had some issues with my parents were getting divorced. They have a family business, which I was the second generation CEO of that family business, as you already mentioned. And so I sort of took a 23-year hiatus, I guess you'd say, off the bicycle by raising a family and running a business. And it wasn't until 2012 I reached out, 2012 I reached out to my coach to help train my son, who is running 19 half marathons. So there's a little overachievers in the family here, as you can tell. So I reached out to him to help it so my son wouldn't end up being injured in his preparation. And so my coach actually, ironically, got me back on the bicycle. And in fact, if I look back from 14 through 19 when I raced, he was the one who got me into racing. I met him on a training ride, and so he got me to racing. So here I take the 23 years off. He gets me back on a bicycle to do a charity ride. And I did this San Francisco to San Diego charity ride, and he saw there was still something in there. And he was the one who actually then offered up, he goes, you realize no woman has ever gone for the land speed record. And he had in 85. It's been broken since then in 95, but nobody else has broken the overall record since that point in time. And no female has ever even attempted. So within a second, it was a no-brainer. I get to be the first woman in the world, which how many things are left where no female has even attempted. And this is a record that goes back to 1899, the first time it was established. And so I said, I'm on board. Little did I know it was going to be a 4-year journey from that conversation to being able to go out in 2016 and set the women's record at 147 miles an hour, which put me third place in line for overall. Because my coach, John Howard, still had 152, and then the current men's record holder was 166.9. And so it was actually at the last day of the event when I did the women's record. I knew we could go faster, but it had rained the night before and we couldn't test ourselves. And the race car driver, Shay Holbrook, my coach and I all looked at each other and said, screw it, we're coming back next year. And we're not only going to break the women's record, we're going to take the overall. And that process took 2 years. So wow. 6 years altogether. But that was the long answer of what motivated me was purely the opportunity to do something no other woman has ever done. And then it sort of took on a life of its own.
I love it. I absolutely love it. So can you talk to my listening audience about how it actually worked? I mean, if you haven't seen the videotape, it's incredible. You're riding behind a car. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Because I understand it's like this inconceivable, not feasible
Yes.
thing when I tell people I rode a bicycle 183.9 miles an hour. They went, "Are you motorcycle?" No, no motor on the bicycle.
Right.
But I have this, and then they would ask, "Is it downhill?" Nope, it's perfectly flat. So can they just sort of look at me and go, "How?" So how this is, it's called a paced bicycle land speed record. So paced being there is an object in front of you, a vehicle in front of you that has a motorized engine that's pushing the air around and creating this void of air behind that vehicle, and that's that area that I ride my bicycle behind. And so we do this at the Bonneville Salt Flats, which is out in Utah, and it is where motorcycle and vehicle records are made because it is perfectly flat. Only the curvature of the earth is the change in elevation for miles upon miles. And so that's why they do these 500 mile an hour speed records in these, what they call streamliner vehicles and things of that nature. So it's an obvious place to be able to do this record. So I start from 0 miles per hour. I'm actually tethered, connected to the vehicle because I have a single gear on the bicycle, and I can't turn that gear. It's like having fifth gear in your vehicle, and all you can do is drive out of the parking lot in fifth gear. You can't do it. You have to get to a speed where your engine can turn that gear over. Same with the bicycle. So I have to be towed at least to 110 miles an hour before I can really turn that gear over. And so that takes about 1.25 miles to get up to speed. I release, and now I'm pedaling because it is a direct drive bicycle on that single gear. So at any time my wheels are moving, my pedals are moving. And I am moving 138.5 feet for each revolution of the pedals that I'm making. So that's how big of a gear it is. And so as I do the release, I stay in that pocket of air, which now has created this huge, almost in a sense, suction, because it's, as you know, the vehicle's making a void or pushing the air around, but then the air comes back behind me and sort of shoves me forward. And so now I am not only physically having to stay in that pocket of air, the faster we go, the more it becomes a bicycle handling skill, almost like surfing that pocket of air with the bicycle.
Wow.
And so I do that between mile marker 1.25 when I've released all the way through mile marker 5. And what they do is they measure the average speed between mile marker 4 and 5 as my speed record, and that average was 183.9. And if you think about it, someone did the math for me recently, and we verified it, and it's basically for every second in that last mile, because it only took me 19 seconds to do the last mile at 183.9.
Wow.
Every second was an entire football field I crossed.
Oh,
every second, 19 times over. I did 19 football fields in a row in that, with 1 second per football field was my average. So
what was the cadence on that? I mean, were you, was it just curious about that? How many, right.
Yeah. Well, because the fact that it was that big, huge gear, when I'm doing at 110 miles an hour, my cadence is like 67. So it is low. And that's why I have to be at least at that speed to be able to turn those cranks over on my own. Otherwise, it's like having the hardest gear you could imagine and trying to climb Mount Everest on a bike. It's just not going to happen.
Wow.
So yeah, at 67 at the low end. And I'm a very good, I'm a sprinter by nature. And so for me, I love the fast, higher cadence. And so when I'm at the top speed, I'm at about 120 RPM.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So talk to us a little bit about what it mentally and physically took to achieve this feat.
Oh, well, physically, it would seem pretty obvious, the physical necessity of this. And you ask a great question with the mental, so I'll get to that in a moment. But physically, I was doing a lot of motor pacing behind a electric motorcycle on the Vela Tron here in San Diego, California, with a track bike. So it emulated very similar of what I would be doing with a fixed gear, single speed bicycle behind a Lakester or that dragster with the fairings that we were doing. So I emulated that scenario on the velodrome, but I also did a lot of strength training in the gym with deadlifts and walking lunges with a program that Jacques Devore, who does a specific cycling program called Maximum Overload. It's for weight training and strength conditioning. So I did that. I would do group rides. and it's just really specific to what the muscles were needing to be doing out there. I did here in my training because I couldn't practice behind the car. I needed 6.5 miles, and there's just no place to take that vehicle that's not allowed to even be on the roads to go test it. So that was on that end. But the mental end, actually, because there's this Evel Knievel-ish portion of this record that many people physically are capable of doing this record. It's whether or not they really want to. There's a little bit of crazy in me, and part of being able to be calm and comfortable with that is I did a lot of neurofeedback training, which I did with Interoptimal, where we hooked up some diodes onto my head, and it was it's some neurofeedback with my brain in preparation. Back when I started racing again, I did hypnotherapy. I did visualization. I had a CD that right when I'd go to sleep at night, I'd play this CD to where it had a lot of positive messages in it that I had helped create. And so there was a lot on the mental preparation to not get out there and freak out. Because if you freak out in something like this, it can be disastrous.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So besides that, were there any other barriers that you faced?
Oh my goodness. Yes. So that in 2016, I mentioned I went out and set the first ever women's record at 147. And then it took till 2018 to do the overall record. So I call that my two bookends, my two bookended world records. And there's a little bit of different things that happened between 2016 and 2018. The year of 2017 was quite an eventful one. I actually had a very bad training accident in February of 2017 where I broke my shoulder blade, broke a rib, and sort of was basically off the bike for about 6 to 8 weeks. And so that was a huge delay. We had the vehicle that we had used in 2016, we thought we'd be able to use in 2017, ended up being pulled from us. So now we had no vehicle. I went out and met and married the man of my dreams. I actually met him on March 4th, and we got married June 23rd. I ran the Great Wall of China Marathon, and I shot myself in the leg at a shooting competition in October of 2017 with a 9mm. Actually, my finger did not make the gun go boom. I was at a competition. I have an aftermarket trigger, and the screw had backed out, so the safety fell out, and I loaded, made ready with the range officer right there, went to holster it, and it went off because it caught that screw, and now the safety was out. So needless to say, I'm no longer having aftermarket triggers on my gun, but it was a very eventful 2017 when it came to both challenges and wonderful things, but just sort of, distractions from the direction we were going. But I stayed true to the course and had to overcome a few things and definitely came back with a vengeance for that record in 2018.
Well, that's so awesome. I mean, that, a lot of people who would have gone through what you went through would have said, you know what, I'm going to pass. But, your perseverance, was amazing. So before we move on, I just want to say that I'm so appreciative of our sponsors, and I must thank them. Please support our sponsors and tell them that you heard about them on Hilary Topper on Air. Special thanks to the Russo Law Group, MedPro, once again, Nut Butter, and Fortune Fine Jewelry. Now back to you, Denise. Tell me about the Vela Tron. So how fast did you actually go on that when you were preparing for this?
Oh, at the Velodrome?
Velodrome.
Yep, that's okay. Yes, I just want to make sure we were talking about the same thing. I was able to go about 42 miles an hour. The thing is we put a very big gear on that bicycle, that track bike that I was using, which actually I borrowed from somebody. I don't even own my own track bikes. I had borrowed one from a friend for the last 4 to 5 years. It was his spare track bike, but I'd go out there and they have a motorcycle set up to do it on the Velodrome. And so we drop in and we just keep increasing speed. We try and again emulate the power output that I'm going to be needing to do. And so that was just, it was almost like I was meant to do drafting. And the irony is I look back and when I first met my coach, John Howard, which of course got me into racing, got me back on the bike, and got me to do this record, so he's very influential. How I actually met him was he went zooming by me, and I got on his wheel for about 8 miles. So I literally met my coach and drafting him.
Wow.
And how ironic is it that, the coup de grace of basically all these years and years of time together, and what do? I do a drafting record. It was just sort of the irony of that. But I mention that because when I went down to the velodrome and did these motor pacing drills, it was just, I'd get off and I was like a giddy kid that just got off the best amusement park ride going, well, that was so much fun. I love doing this. Training's not always fun. It's not like I sit there and overjoy for all the training. Training can be monotonous. I moved 28 miles away, and all my training was still local where I used to be. And so I had a lot of travel time, and I got to a burnout stage pretty close to the event that I had to really switch things up and overcome. But anytime I was down at the velodrome doing that motor pacing, that would just reinforce that I'm doing the right thing of what I love to do, because I would love doing that motor pacing. That was my favorite workout of anything.
Can someone really learn how to increase their speed on the bike? I mean, as I started this interview, I said I can barely get to 15 miles an hour.
Right.
Yeah. Is it really possible? And what do they have to do to get there?
Well, I'm certainly not a coach, but I've been at the instruction of my coaches for a long time to know it is going to be on the specific training. I mean, there's the fast twitch muscles and the slow twitch muscles. And if you can sit there and increase those fast twitch muscles and do drills, and then continue to increase those length of time that you're doing that same output of wattage, it's naturally going to increase. What a lot of people tend to do is they just ride miles and miles and miles and go, why aren't I getting faster? Well, you have to do quality, not quantity. And so that there's a magic in balancing that out that a coach does wonderfully if they can read what type of athlete they're working with. Because the same training protocol and plan is not going to be the same for each different person, where I'm like a sprinter. So I can go really fast, really short period of time. But if you want me to go longer at that same speed, it's a different type of training that's needing to be done. So I think that's the biggest thing, I guess, the overall would be is a coach who's really good at knowing that's the objective. They'll evaluate where you're at and develop a building block training plan to get you there.
Awesome. Do you have any advice for anyone who wants to do something out of their comfort level?
Absolutely. One of my things, and this sort of will maybe answer a future question too, is what do I hope to get out of what I did? Obviously, there's this, this pride that I accomplished something I set a goal to do. But what I love to hear is when people are inspired, and then they ask me, how did you decide to do something so out there? And part of it is I have a little craziness in me, but a lot of people, I really want to see people get out of their chairs, get up and get back into the game of life. And so a lot of times people just, they're asking, how do I get that motivation? And what worked for me was back when I got back on the bike, and even before that, when I started running half marathons and marathons, I just set a goal. I just said, okay, this sounds really crazy, but I'm going to do this. And ironically, it goes into how I did an Ironman, because I did an Ironman in 2013, and that's actually the last time I was in the water too. But I could run, because I was running halves and fulls, marathons. And then I was on my bike. So I literally looked at that and I went, you know what? When I get in the water, I get panicky, and I didn't like that. I said, I want to overcome how the water is in control of me instead of me being in control. And so I set a goal, and I said, in a year and a half, I'm going to do an Ironman. And I said it, and I said, that's what I'm going to do. And so I set the intention out there, and it was far enough out so it didn't scare those living you-know-whats out of me. And as you know, when it comes to events, especially with Ironman, you have to register a year in advance. And so I registered for the event, and now, I really had to think about, I'm going to have to train. So for me, what worked is I decided I wanted to do this. I put my money where my mouth is by doing a registration. And then I'm the type of person that if I register for something, I'm going to do it. So I knew that I would have to do it. And so then I did the training that was necessary. So that's the thing is, people just need to decide what is it that you want to do. Put your money where your mouth is. In other words, either make yourself accountable to someone else, get a partner to say, hey, let's do this together and help me keep on track, and then do the training to get to where you want to be. And it could be anything, a 5K, but it's, it's that one little catalyst that may lead you to another thing and then another. And so it's just that first step, as you always hear, that first step is the biggest step, but just do it.
I love it. So let's switch gears for a minute. And can you tell me a little bit about Rancho Santa Fe security systems?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, it's actually, and a lot of people ask, how is it that you're able to train and do this? And I'm very fortunate. I am second generation of a family security company. We do alarm patrol and guard services here in San Diego area. My parents had started it in 1978, and I pretty much inherited the running of the business very shortly after coming out of high school. So I entered the business, and my parents had gone through a divorce and a partnership separation from who bought my mom out. And, so there was a lot of turmoil. And so I just dove headlong into the business, like I said, and did the family thing, the CEO thing, and really enjoyed the challenges there. But I put my time in, that's for sure. And now I have my oldest son who's 25, and he is general manager and taking the reins. And so with great managers here and a business that had been around for many decades, it allowed me the time to also go and train. And so, but it also gave me some of that different view of some of the perseverance that's necessary to sort of get through it. But I'm very fortunate to have a family business that has pretty much, that's the only thing I've ever done besides my bicycling my whole entire life. So, it's actually, and it's just really nice that it's always been there. Because my parents started it when I was 4 years old. So,
wow.
It's always been there. So, and it's just beautiful to see now my son taking over the reins.
I love it. So what's next now for the fastest cyclist in the world?
And if you had talked to me a couple of weeks ago, I would basically give you this answer, which is still correct, but I now have added something. So for me, a lot of people have been asking what is next, because it's a logical question. And I want to do public speaking. With my son coming into the family security business, I'm actually looking for sort of the next chapter in my life from a more work standpoint, and I would like to use my land speed record to help motivate and inspire other people through doing public speaking, because then I can really make my semi-retirement and make my hours and things of that nature. And so that's essentially what I was gearing up towards. However, a couple weeks ago, I was offered an opportunity, because people did ask also, are you going to go for 200 miles an hour? Because they know I did 147. They know I did 183.
Wow.
And they're going, are you now going to try and go and push it further? And the ride at the 183 was terrifying, whereas the ride at 147 in 2016 was an amusement park, like a total high-end amusement park ride. It was thrilling, but it felt very controlled. And I would do that one again in a heartbeat. 183 scared me and it really was death-defying. So I don't have a desire to push it. I've already gotten the overall record. There'll be others to come and try and push it up, but not me. So I figured I was done on the physical aspect. And 2 weeks ago, I got offered an opportunity to do a different type of women's world record, which is the Human Powered Vehicle Association world record. So what I just did was a motor pace. So there's a motorized vehicle in front of me I'm paced behind, whereas this one is no vehicle in front of you, no motor on that vehicle in front of you, because there is no vehicle in front of you. It's just you and a bicycle with this sort of cocoon around you called basically a fairing that's built all the way around the bicycle. And so it's all about aerodynamics, and then the cyclist inside of that pod to do the power necessary to move it forward. And currently the women's world record, 76 miles an hour. So it is my intention this September to get a different type of world speed record on a bicycle, and that's the human-powered one.
Wow. Well, we will all sure to be rooting for you and cheering you on out there. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for
Absolutely.
motivating so many people.
Thank
Um,
you.
can, can you just give us, how can somebody get in touch with you and follow your adventures?
Absolutely. Well, the best, only because it's my comfort level, is we do have a Facebook page.
Mhm.
You just look at FireCycle. We have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, but Facebook is really where we keep everything updated. But if and our contact information is there. But we also have a website that will keep information updated, and it's theprojectspeed.com. So if you go to theprojectspeed.com, be able to get in touch with us.
This was wonderful. Thank you so much. You were a true inspiration. So thank you so much for being on the show. I
You
also
bet.
want to thank our sponsors, the Russo Law Group, which is an elder law, estate planning, and special needs law firm right here on Long Island. MetPro, a concierge service that combines diet and exercise, and they're located in California but service the whole country. Once again, Nut Butter, maker of all different nut butters found in your supermarket. And finally, Fortunoff Fine Jewelry, located in Westbury, Long Island, but also found on the internet. And they've got magnificent jewelry for every occasion. But last but not least, I want to thank you, our listeners, for tuning in. If you want more information on this show or any other show, visit our new website at hilarytopperonair.com, or you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, you name it, we're out there. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.